Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for attending my talk, Coding Blind. So, just a disclosure. I've done my presentation in the form of a simple HTML page because for me to read things, the simpler, the better. And I wanted to try and give you guys an experience of how I typically do things. So I don't have Google Slides or PowerPoint. This is handcrafted. So here we've got the roadmap of today. I think the thing I'd like to highlight is the first point about having fun. So part of what I've done is from every slide after this, there'll be a section at the bottom with a puzzle of some kind, and I'll reveal all the answers at the end. If it's not fun for you to do, don't do them. And then I suppose the other two things that are kind of interesting, I thought it was important for me to talk about my background. So I'd like for you to have an idea of what it's like for me as a person, as well as giving some general tips on if you should have a blind person in your team. And so I thought giving you some background on me might be useful. And then I'm going to solve a problem live. I might not do the whole one, depending on how long it takes me, but hopefully I can do it quickly. Yeah, and then some of these other things, social integration is important, mobility and tooling, I think could also be interesting. Okay. Okay, so a bit about me. So the first point, Ari. Ari is my guide dog. You've probably seen other people with guide dogs. Other ways of getting around is using a long white cane. I find because I've been doing consulting work for a long time, I travel a lot to strange places. There are often staircases, all sorts of things. I find that a guide dog adapts to these changing environments a lot easier than you would with the cane. So Ari is my special friend. He's about to retire. He's now 10 years old as a guide dog. So he's about to go and enjoy his retirement. And then I thought just to include about family, just what kind of things can blind people do outside of work. So I have 3 children, 2 in grade 11, and then I have a baby of 18 months. I own a home in Rudderput. My wife is also blind, also with a guide dog, and we live by ourselves. We cook our own meals, pay our bills. Thankfully for Uber, we can travel. And then the other thing that people are often interested in knowing about is my eye condition. So the condition is abbreviated to FEVR and pronounced fever. It is a genetically transferred disease. It is also a degenerative condition. So I wasn't born blind. I went blind at the age of 6, and you need not go blind. So all my brothers, my siblings are all brothers. I was the eldest, and when they discovered it with me, they were able to take preventative measures with my brothers so that they didn't lose their sight. I suppose the most significant thing around my education is I have a BSc degree in computer science, which I got at the University of Wits, and I have a near-complete honors degree also in computer science. Very important hobbies. I love guitars. I wanted to play for you guys, but I heard about the copyright infringements, and I was like, I don't want to be in trouble. And chess. My midnight entertainment when I'm babysitting is playing Lichess. Well, chess and Lichess. Anybody want to challenge me? It's my Lichess ID. Yeah, and then I was in two minds whether to add some of these projects. This is not boasting. It's just to give you an idea of the kind of things that as blind people that we can actually work on. So, like in Standard Bank's current internet banking, there's code that I've written in there. If you're paying people, SASFIN's online credit application. Vitality, the new Vitality app in the international markets from Discovery, I played quite an important role in the actuarial calculations, like specifically your vitality age. I could tell you what influences that. Cool, and hopefully you've spotted the first puzzle, if that should interest anybody. Okay. So here I've put up a story that I'm going to try and solve. Roman numbers. I deliberately made it nice and easy for myself, only having to count up to 3. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. So I'm going to, if you bear with me, I'm going to set a time on my phone. I'm going to limit myself to 5 minutes, and we see what we get in 5 minutes. Hey Siri, set a timer for 5 minutes. Okay. All right, so I typically code in the command line. Today's a little bit uncomfortable because I usually use a Mac, but because of the HDMI features, I'm using a Windows laptop today, so I'm slightly out of sorts and uncomfortable, but we're going to do it. But I typically work in the command line. Vim is my editor of choice, just to keep things simple, and I usually have all my build tools run from the command line. All right. What I've prepared, because I was worried about internet, I'm just going to show you here. All we've got so far should be a package.json and node module. So I've pre-downloaded the node modules in case we had any internet trouble. Okay, so here we start. Let's just start again. Yeah. Okay, so uh, okay, so this is I'm going to stop here, but this is just to give you a feel. So I'd output from the building. It would output to a file. Let me just stop this guy. From building, it would go to a file which I can interrogate. I have all the windows that I'm busy coding in. I generally develop TDD. And I like interesting problems, typically algorithmic type problems like this one. All right, cool. I'm going to take us back to the presentation. All right, cool. I get asked a lot when I join a project, what about how do we deal with whiteboard sessions? Since COVID, we now basically have two forms of the whiteboard sessions, physical whiteboards and digital whiteboards. I separated them, but they boil down to the same kind of problem. So when you use something like, if you're standing around a physical whiteboard, obviously I can't see what you might be drawing. And the same thing goes for Miro. Even though you can be adding text and have stickies and all of those things, that's all happening on a drawing canvas, which is not accessible. However, I have the point here, team safety. So I think that's the most important thing, is it safe for me to ask questions? Are you able to articulate what you're trying to show pictorially? Can you give it a verbal description of that? I think those are really the important things. There are a lot of things like, if we're going to talk about a complex model, we could 3D print something, we could mold something with clay, we can, you can print things in Braille. There are many technologies out there that you can use. I've been doing this for a long time, since like 2002. And I've never needed any of that. The most important thing is, do I have the freedom to ask questions, and are people open to the questions and answering? I find that recording sessions can be very helpful for me, especially if we're exchanging technical knowledge, that I can refer back to them, because often it's difficult taking notes while you're actively participating in a conversation. Yeah, and then the next thing that often comes up is pairing, because I don't think I mentioned I work for Equal Experts, and pairing is something that's very important to us. So it can, it could possibly be tricky. So the mechanics of it. I thought I'd just briefly talk about that, because the way I read affects the way we can pair. So I use a Braille display, a Braille terminal, to read what's going on the screen, as well as there's voice feedback. So it would be difficult for me to touch somebody else's, touching somebody else's computer is not even going to help me. And the software that controls these things changes the behavior of the computer. So usually, it's difficult for other people to operate my computer, because clicking the mouse may behave differently than normal. So usually, us having the code open on each on our own machines is helpful, and we'll talk and try and solve the problem together. Remote working has actually made this a lot better because we can use tools such as Screen Hero. You can even, with remote control with Zoom, that's good enough. Visual Studio Code and IntelliJ also have remote collaborating features that work fine. And then I put rotation here as another point. So it's important that the blind person doesn't become the responsibility of a person in the team. You need to be integrated, and you need to be getting the same benefit as everybody else. And everybody else should be getting the benefit of working with the blind person as well. Okay, yeah, then this is the other interesting thing, is like what kind of tasks can you as a blind person pick up? So the first point I've got here is well-written stories. That's really important. You know, there needs to be in text what it is we're trying to solve. Clear acceptance criteria. If there are images, preferably some description of them, or whoever put them there needs to be available to talk you through what those pictures might be. I recently had a situation where I picked up a story where there was very little text, and I thought that little bit of text was actually what I had to do, and I didn't know that there was an image attached which actually gave 90% of the story that needed to be done. So, and then I often get a thing about are you more suited to front-end stories or back-end stories or whatever? For the most part, it doesn't matter. As I say, I've worked on Standard Bank's internet banking on the actual front end. The difficulty is really in the real presentation. You know, the CSS, the coloring, the styling. But that's a relatively small part, and you may need to ask some colleagues to assist you if you've picked up something that needs that. But there's usually enough middle mechanics in the front end that's really a problem. You can find enough things to work on that you shouldn't have to worry about that. And then back-end stories are typically quite easy to work on. They're not a problem at all. I think my advice is not to stress about it. I view it, if you pick up a piece of work, even if it's something that you're not familiar with, it's your responsibility to get the work done, and if it means you need to collaborate or pair with somebody else, then that's what you do. All right, cool. I hope I can tell you guys a blind joke or two. So the other day, I heard of somebody on a bus who gave up his seat to a blind gentleman, and unfortunately, he lost his job the following day as the bus driver. Yeah. This is another thing, right? I've taken up a seafood diet recently, but it's not helping. Anyway, yeah, so we like to joke. We're happy to joke about ourselves. Well, I am. There are a lot of funny ones I couldn't tell you, but But yeah, I like to see the funny, humorous side of of life. I think it is important to consider blind people when planning social activities. It doesn't mean that the activity is going to necessarily be suited 100% for them, right? So, and that's okay. It's if you communicate that, hey, we're planning. We did something a little while ago, like a geolocation type of game where people would select some place on a map, and then the game would go from there. So that's obviously difficult for me as such to participate in something like that. But if you pair up with other people, it's fine. If you at least if you at least communicate that this is what we're planning. I certainly don't expect life to be planned around me. But some more important things are, don't make decisions on behalf of a blind person. So just speak to them, like, if you're scared to send a blind person to a client because how's he going to get there, or something like that, just ask him. You have the skill that we want to send. We want to send you to this strange place. Are you going to get there? And let them give you that kind of feedback. And the next point: check if the person needs help before just doing something. I think it speaks to the previous point. So don't just add sugar to guys' coffee because you think that's what he needs. Ask him; he might not take sugar at all. And then about contributing. So it's important for us as blind people to also to be able to contribute to the environment that we find ourselves in. So, it's nice to be included when we're planning when we're planning things, and to plan things in a way that we're also able to contribute, because there are a lot of activities that we can participate, like playing chess. Okay, so this is also quite important, is mobility. So this first point might seem obvious or might seem strange, but especially because I have a guide dog, I've had situations where people are really afraid of dogs, or in their culture, because of cultural reasons, that it could be a problem, and so some sensitizing needs to be done around the matter, making sure that everybody is confident, comfortable. I mean. And then, just around some practical things around office planning. So offices are now often open planned. We often have situations of rows and rows of desks, very little space to walk, between the chairs because people are sitting back to back. So, just around making sure that the person can get in and out safely. And then the next one, ensuring that the person can get to and from the office safely. Not so long ago, I worked on West Street in Sandton, opposite the Gautrain, and it's actually incredibly difficult to cross to cross the street there, even at the pedestrian crossing where there's a robot. And the team I was working with noticed this and alerted the security guards that are standing there. So I used to get some help. So just some small things like that. I mean, I'm not saying you must change the location of the office, but one just needs to bear that in mind. Okay, then around tooling. So okay, so my setup is generally very simple. The reason I like using a terminal is that you've got a fixed font, you've got a fixed number of lines, and the output I get on my Braille terminal, I can know exactly where I'm at, which line I'm on, and if a sighted person tells me he's looking at line 10, I can easily navigate to line 10. It also preserves indentation. So the screen readers in the GUIs are typically geared towards reading, so you often find it difficult to pick up things like indentation. Also, the accessibility of many of them is lacking. They've been picking up recently, but I often get frustrated, so I go to the stuff that's easy for me to use. I will hold up my Braille display, you can see it. So this one can show 40 letters of Braille at a time, and then you can scroll up and down, left and right to get to other text. Okay. So developer tooling. So I typically use, as I say, Vim, the command line. Collaboration tools, most of the major ones work. I would never be prescriptive. You can get, to me, the simpler the better. Slack works fine, especially that Slack is so programmable, so you can even, I've experimented with little command line tools that help me get just the most important bits. Teams works fine. Discord you can also get around with. Zoom actually works really well. Well, that actually fits into the next point, messaging. Oh yeah, in collaboration, I was also thinking of tools like Miro. Now Miro is very difficult for us to use, but for instance, Google Docs is a nice alternative. So recently, I facilitated a session, and I just used Google set up what I wanted people to do in Google Sheets. Pairing tools. I briefly touched on that earlier. So Screen Hero works well. I have also used the VS Code Live Share, which works quite well. I think the important thing, if I could say something here, is if you're choosing a new tool, though, check how accessible it is, because there are things like our HR tool, for instance, trying to book leave is sometimes difficult because the modal pops up. One of the modals pops up in a weird place. So in certain situations, a blind person might ask some other people to help complete some things. There are also a lot of apps out there that are still not accessible, especially web apps, believe it or not. So my colleagues are often very kind in helping me out with these things. Okay, and then in conclusion, to me, the really important things are communication. That people in the team feel comfortable to speak to me, and that I feel comfortable speaking to them. And team safety. It goes hand in hand with team safety. That it's safe to ask questions, even if it may seem stupid to you that other people should it's stuff that other people knows, but it's not always obvious. So there needs to be some empathy, and if the team is safe, it usually works out well. And then I have the final slide. Anybody who wanted to know the answers to the puzzles that preceded, I have them all here. Yeah, can I take some questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go.
I'll go first. How's it? Sorry, it's loud. My name's Trevor, and yeah, as a developer, I'm sort of, my mind's blown. You're probably so much more capable at doing this without eyes. I'm flabbergasted. The first thing that I do as a developer when I don't know something, I go to Stack Overflow and I will look at what other people do. Are you able to go onto sites and look up things if things don't make sense? Or how would you approach something if you...
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I use Stack Overflow a lot. And I downloaded a lot of documentation. So the one big downside to the way I develop is that I don't have code completion. So I often have to, you'll often find me like Googling a Java package, a class name, so that I can find the definition and see what methods are available, what the arguments are that it takes. So I spend a lot of time doing that. And that's, I think, also why TDD pays off a lot for me, right? Because I write tests. I write a lot of tests, and I test what the things that I want to use do, and that I understand what they do. But yeah, I spend a lot of time reading documentation and Googling.
Thank you. The one thing I take for granted is autocompletes. And I'm like, if I don't have autocompletes, I can't do my job.
Cool. Thanks so much, Brett. That was really great. I really enjoyed it. So I do quite a bit of teaching, specifically in the front-end world and so forth. And I am curious, like, if there's one specific thing that I can maybe take away for my students and so forth that they either stop doing or that they do more of or that they avoid or so forth. Is there any, like, thing that would be your number one in terms of the way people code HTML and so forth that would make it easier browsing the web?
Yes. So the most important thing is using things for their semantic intention, right? So use a table for tabular data, not for presentation, if possible. Use it. Don't try and use a table. Try and use a table for tabular data instead of using CSS to create a table, because again, actually at Standard Bank, there's a situation where you could see all your accounts and the balances, and it looks like all in a table. So screen readers are able to know how a table works, and they'll present it to me as, rows and columns. But if it's not like in a table like that, when you navigate, it doesn't know which things are related to which can make it difficult. Don't make a span clickable without. I mean, if you're going to do something like that, for instance, then use ARIA tags or labels to help guide the screen readers that this thing should be treated as a button. Yeah. So also focus, right? So often, I was using a thing of our HR system. So the problem there, what happens is you click on something and there's a modal that pops up, but what happens is that code is being added to the end of the DOM, right? And the screen reader is, it's interrogating the DOM. So when I actually read a website, I don't necessarily read things in the same order that you see them, because the CSS is telling the browser where to put things. I read things in the order that they're put in the DOM. So where I'm going with this is, if you've got like a pop-up, see if you can move the focus to that pop-up, so that you can easily find it and navigate and interact with it. So those are two of the most important things I'd say right now.
Can I quickly squeeze in a follow-up
Yeah,
question?
go for it.
What would be good references to look at in terms of sites that do accessibility really well?
Yeah, you've got me off the top of my head. I can't tell you right now. Can I pop some? I have some links. Can I pop them in the Slack
That'd be
Slack channel
amazing.
afterwards?
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Cool.
Oh, hi, Brett.
Hi.
Interesting talk. Worked with you on internet banking. I tested your code. I tested a lot of your code, really, and it was always flawless. So I'm impressed with that. Anyways, wanted to ask you, right? Do you have a Twitter account you could share with us so we could get the links for what he was asking? Which is websites we could follow. I feel like as a front-end community, we should really put more focus in making our front-end facing applications as accessible as possible. So if we could share that as well, it could really help a lot. And then also, what is your favorite stack? I assume you like JavaScript because I saw you were writing your tests in JavaScript. So what is your favorite stack, front and back?
Yeah, I chose. so Kotlin is actually my favorite programming language. When I realized I needed a machine to be ready for today to do, Node was the quickest to get going. Yeah, my favorite stack, sure. It's difficult. I like a lot of stuff. I really like Kotlin as a programming language a lot. But I think it just depends. It really depends on the problem that you're trying to solve. I'm not a huge fan of Spring, but that's because it's like got so many annotations and things. I don't like black magic. But yeah, Drop Wizard and Kotlin are pretty cool. Any other questions?
Hi, Brett. Loic here. I was, I think a few years ago, introduced to, through one of my mentors, a program for coding for hearing impaired. And today I couldn't even imagine that programming can be done for the blind at this high level. So my question is, like, if I have a kid which is blind, and what can I tell him to make him understand that programming could be an option for him?
So maybe one needs to approach it from a fun perspective, first of all. So I don't know if you guys have seen for kids, I forget the website, but like for young kids, so this wouldn't work for blind kids, but for young sighted kids, there's like a website where you can build things almost like with Lego blocks, but it is kind of programming. So each bit of the program is sort of represented almost as a Lego block. So the way I started was I've always been passionate about music. So I started when I started coding, I was still in school using GW Basic, and I used to program my music pieces that the computer could play the music pieces, and it's actually not difficult. It's not difficult to do, and you get results quite quickly. So that's something, that's something else. That's good. Yeah, and I guess I'm happy to speak to any child who needs some inspiration, and there are other blind developers that I know that have also made it that I'm sure will be more than happy to speak to other blind people and tell them what the road ahead looks like, what the path is, how you can achieve it. Cool.